Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today is another countdown because I don't know, I've been making a lot of those recently. And today I'll be talking about my top 15 favorite parks. And pretty much as with every other one of my lists, there are plenty of parks I haven't been to, notably most of the parks outside of the US and pretty much anything south or west of Carowinds. But there are a few exceptions and I'll bring those up. But yep, just know northeast US is where most of these are. I'll be judging the parks on multiple factors, but mainly the roller coaster collection and other factors including the other rides at the park, the food, the atmosphere, any of the scenery, or anything else that's really notable about the park. So let's get into it. Also, by the way, I only had like 13 parks I really wanted to include on this list, so 15 and 14 are a bit questionable. Also, the footage used for the parks are often my vlogs or their official park POVs, and any of those will be in the description. Coming in at number 15 is Six Flags Darien Lake. Six Flags Darien Lake, or Darien Lake, Six Flags has bought this park a few times. It's an overall pretty solid park that I think I had a bit lower expectations for just because Six Flags America exists, but this park is pretty much a better version of that park. Darien Lake's coaster collection is pretty good. It's got definitely the better of the two Ride of Steel clones, a solid Gerstlauer and Tantrum, Viper's a pretty good Arrow, Moto Coaster's a solid family coaster, they have a few others, and the worst part is they have a Mind Eraser clone. And, I mean, it's not the worst Vekoma SLC I've been on, but it's pretty bad. But one bad coaster doesn't make a park bad, especially when it has Moose on the Loose at it! But in all seriousness, I do really like the atmosphere of this park. The lakes, which is what the park's named after, are all over the place. There's some solid greenery, and it's just Six Flags America if it were a lot better. And of course, Moose on the Loose. Who could forget about Moose on the Loose? I've already mentioned it twice already. I love Moose on the Loose. Coming in at number 14 is Dorney Park. Dorney Park is easily the closest Cedar Fair park to my house, so I've been there quite a few times, but not enough so that I start getting a sour taste for that park, unlike another park that happens to be located in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we'll be talking about later. Oh yeah, Dorney Park. I should rather talk about that. Dorney Park has a very just average Cedar Fair look. It's not bad, not exceptional, just average. Its coaster selection, in my opinion, is pretty underrated. I think Steel Force is really good. Hydra's my favorite floorless. Talon's a pretty decent B&M invert. And they've got a few okay other rides. But I don't know how they did it. But their Wild Mouse and Zamperla Kitty Coaster are so insanely terrible, I don't get it. It's so awful. But back to positives. It's got a pretty decent flat ride collection, but it is oddly missing any sort of dark ride. The food is average Cedar Fair, and overall it's just an average to low-end Cedar Fair park, which is decent enough to get it on this list. Seriously, Knoebels, this is your POV for Phoenix? This looks like garbage. Oh, anyways, number 13 is Knoebels. Okay, to be honest, I really get why people like Knoebels a lot. I do. It has such charm, I guess, to it. Everything is landscaped and all the scenery is really nice. It just has the feel of just an independent park, which is different from pretty much almost every other amusement park. The rides are all just so vintage, except Impulse. We can ignore that one. Ignoring Impulse is a good idea. That ride sucks. But still, I get why people like this park a lot. It's just, I don't think the rides and coasters that they have there justify it being any better than this. I hate to sound like, oh, parks need great coasters to be good, and I really don't want to sound like that, but, its selection is pretty weak. Phoenix is, of course, extremely good, one of my favorite wooden coasters of all time, but seriously, Golden Ticket Awards, better than, Toro, Ghost Rider, Mystic, and all of those. But I mean, after that, Twister's okay, so is Flying Turns, although the history of Flying Turns is cool. Black Diamond's just a dark ride, which, speaking of, their haunted house is pretty cool. And then Impulse. I hate Impulse. I really need to talk about that sometime, but now is not the time. But it's got other good aspects. It's got really good food. The carousel is good, according to the golden tickets at least. I didn't actually ride it. But overall, a lemonade stand that looks like a lemon does not compete with Steel Vengeance, okay? Coming in at number 12 is Dollywood. No, Dollywood wouldn't be higher on this list if Elrod was open, I swear. That has no effect on my opinions at all. And, okay, maybe it does a little bit, But I think this park's overall good, but I have a few problems with it. I feel like I've been saying it a lot for like these lower entries, but the atmosphere in this park is great. It's just up in the Smoky Mountains, so it's all wooded and all that. The food was fine, but that cinnamon bread, the Dollywood cinnamon bread is better than anything Lightning Rod can give, I swear. The Dollywood cinnamon bread is the best. And I didn't get a chance to see any shows, but I've heard the shows are pretty good. There were some animals, and overall the park's just really nice. My main issue with this park is there's not too much ride depth. Like after Lightning Rod, which was closed when I went, I don't know if you figured that out. I think Mystery Mine's a bit underrated, but Thunderhead's a lot overrated. Fire Chaser's a decent family coaster, same with Blazing Fury, but that's more just a dark ride. And I didn't get a chance to ride Wild Eagle, but it seems okay. And also, Tennessee Tornado I thought was my 150th. I mean, it isn't, but it's a solid but way too short air looper. It's just that this park lacks a solid like number 2 that's like really good, but I could see them getting one in a few years. But this is just another entry on this list towards the bottom that I think is still a really nice overall park that just lacks a bit of ride depth. But this point's a bit circumstantial, but I do feel like when I went, it was really crowded, and they just didn't do a great job at crowd control. The operations were bad, the food lines took forever, and I just don't think they handled crowd very well, but I just got a bit unlucky on that day. Overall, just fix Elrod, make it reliable, give it a lift hill if you need to. Okay, maybe not that far. Knott's Berry Farm is a park that I really haven't talked much about on this channel at all, outside of the occasional praise of Ghost Rider or Accelerator. I only had a few hours there and only got on 3 coasters, but 2 of them were Ghost Rider and Accelerator, and the other one was the crowd favorite Jaguar. But I feel like I got a good enough gauge on this park to put it here. I think the ride selection here is very solid. Ghost Rider is an elite wooden coaster. Accelerator is a solid accelerator. I didn't ride them, but Silver Bullet looks like a decent B&M invert. Same with Hang Time looks like a decent Gerstlauer. They've also got some family offerings with Montezuma's and Sierra Sidewinder, and overall the ride selection at this park is very impressive for a smaller scale Cedar Fair park like this. I remember the park looking very nice and clean, and I feel like this park gave a different vibe than a lot of like the other Cedar Fair parks, and I think that's a good thing. It definitely seemed a bit more independent than the rest of them. I don't really have too much to say about this park as I only spent a few hours here, but I feel like it has a lot of the advantages of Cedar Fair Park while still being its own thing and just having a lot of really good rides. Oh boy, here's some classic Roller Coaster Geek footage. Coming in at number 11 is Kennywood. I feel like whenever I hear Kennywood brought up in the coaster community, there's always just a reference to Phantom's Revenge and then not really much else. But I think even outside of it, it's a really solid park. The coaster selection is pretty decent. Obviously, Phantom's Revenge is a borderline top 20 coaster in the world, and a huge improvement from what it used to be. And also proof that Morgan is a good manufacturer. Morgan makes great rides. I love Steel Force. I love Morgan. Then, of course, they've got their 3 classic wooden coasters, Racer, which is a Mobius loop, Thunderbolt, which is a decent train one, and Jackrabbit, which is rough, bad, and has an amazing double down out of completely nowhere. Steel Curtain also looks pretty fun, but I wasn't able to get on it since it was closed when I went. And as for their other non-coaster rides, I think they share a lot with Knoebels with their not as many newer flat rides, but a lot more of just the classic older ones similar to their 3 wooden coasters. Pretty much, my opinion on Kennywood is I think it does a lot of what Knoebels does, but honestly, I think better. It doesn't have as nearly as good of an atmosphere, and I don't think the food was as good. And I forgot to mention Skyrocket. Oops, that's a pretty good ride. Yeah, it's got a fun launch and stuff. I like it. Overall, I like this entire park. It's my second favorite park in Pennsylvania, and Phantom's Revenge would be my favorite ride in Pennsylvania if it wasn't for stupid Wildcat RMC, please. Can you stop making such good rides? I want to appreciate other rides. Coming in at number 10 is a park that I criticized pretty harshly in this video you're seeing, but I do overall like. It's Busch Gardens Williamsburg. One of the main things about Busch Gardens Williamsburg is that it always seems to win most beautiful park, and that isn't undeserved. The landscaping and theming and all the greenery in the park is very well done. Not only that, but their coaster selection is pretty good as well. Apollo's Chariot was the first B&M Hyper, and a pretty good one at that. Griffin's a solid dive. Pantheon looks really good. Alpengeist is a above average invert. Verbolten's a fun family launch coaster. Dark Coaster is a fun family launch coaster. Loch Ness is a good aero, and the less said about Tempesto, the better. The non-coaster ride collection could use a bit of work though, especially with the removal of Mock Tower and Dark Castle a few years ago. And they definitely could use another dark ride or thrilling flat ride, but still. I thought the shows I saw here were well done, the food is pretty good, and I think the theming of the lands is all really good. I have very few issues with the park outside of the fact that they closed every major roller coaster as soon as it hit 40 degrees. Like, come on. You can't tell me that these rides cannot work if it is a degree below 40. Like, come on, this is ridiculous. It was one of the most crowded days of the year. You've got to be... Anyways, completely disregarding questionable personal experiences, good park. Oh boy, it's time for Paramount time. For those of you who don't know, in 2006... Cedar Fair bought out all of the Paramount parks, and with the exception of California's Great America, I've been to all of them, and they're all right in a row since they're all about equal in quality. But one of them had to be last, so coming in at number 8 is Canada's Wonderland. So Canada's Wonderland, in my opinion, is the biggest offender of what 3 of these 4 Paramount parks have, the huge drop in quality after the top handful. Canada's Wonderland is a very good top 3 with Leviathan, a great B&M Giga, Yukon Striker, which is a decent dive, definitely a lot better than Valraven, and Behemoth and about an average B&M Hyper. But then after that, the coaster collection kind of falls off a cliff. Vortex is okay. Then you have Dragonfire, which is a dead average Aero Looper. And then a lot of complete garbage with like Flight Deck, Time Warp, Mighty Canadian Mindbuster, Wild Beast, and all that. But even after that, they've got the best flat ride collection out of any of the Paramounts. 2 shooting rides, which is kind of weird. Neither of them are particularly good, but still cool that they have it. And a pretty similar like food and atmosphere as the rest of the Paramounts. So overall, it's a very good park, and I definitely recommend it. Just my least favorite of the next 4. And also kind of a random point, but Wonder Mountain is my favorite centerpiece of all the parks. I mean, but 2 of them are Eiffel Towers, and the other is Nighthawk. But still, the waterfall is pretty cool. Oh geez, it's another Christmas vlog. Coming in at number 7 is King's Dominion. King's Dominion is another park that suffers from the fall off a cliff after the top handful, but now, in this case, it's only the top 2. So why is this park, which I think is similar in pretty much every aspect outside of the coaster collection, above Canada's Wonderland? Well, that's because the top 2 are 2 coasters that are my top 4 coasters of all time. Yeah, Twisted Timbers is an above average RMC, which you can absolutely never go wrong with. And I-305 is like the best Giga coaster ever, one of the best steel coasters, the most intense coaster out there, and just honestly a really, really great ride. And I don't think the coaster collection falls off as big of a cliff at King's Dominion as it does with like Canada's Wonderland or later Carowinds, because Dominator's not bad. Their new 40 free spin, I mean, I like 40 free spins enough. They've got like a bobsled coaster, and it's not too bad. Their flat rides are average. They've got, in my opinion, the greatest Boo Blasters out of all of them. And since there's only 4, I have been on all of them. Yeah, King's Dominion is absolutely worth a visit just for Twisted Timbers and Intimidator 305 alone. Those 2 rides are both amazing, and the rest of the park isn't too bad. At number 6, we have Kings Island. I think having Kings Island over Carowinds may have been a bit of a bold statement about a few years ago, but I think Carowinds has definitely climbed above Kings Island as the second best Cedar Fair park in my opinion. As for Kings Island itself though, pretty much copy and paste everything I said about the last 2, except now with a different coaster collection. Kings Island's got a lot more coasters than King's Dominion, and just despite the fact that Canada's Wonderland has a lot of coasters, Kings Island definitely has a higher quality of them. But for the coasters, Mystic Timbers is an exceptional GCI. The Beast is a bit overrated, but I've heard with the retracts and with night rides, it's good. Banshee is one of my favorite B&M inverts, and I don't really mind the vest restrainer or the rattle too much. Orion looks very good, but I did go to the park before it was made, and Diamondback, I'm not even going to pretend, Diamondback is just way overrated. It's easily the worst B&M Hyper I've been on. But it's also got a few okay middle coasters, like Bat, Flight of Fear, and my personal, all-time favorite Backlot Stunt Coaster. But yeah, Kings Island, very similar to the last two, doesn't have a huge drop off in quality, but I think I like Carowinds coasters just a bit more. Wow, big shock here. Coming in at number 5 is Carowinds. I definitely didn't mention this park like 5 times. Carowinds is the final park of this back-to-back Paramount Parks marathon. And I think this park's top 4 really carry it all the way to this spot. Fury 325 is obviously an amazing giga and one of the best coasters in the world. Copperhead Strike is pretty decent, weak launches, but some very good inversions and hang time. Afterburn is my second favorite B&M invert with some very solid G-forces. And Intimidator is an above average B&M hyper. So there's a lot of good B&Ms at this park, but then of course you have the Paramount Park's trademarked giant drop in quality. No joke, my 5th favorite coaster in this park is Nighthawk. That's not good. But of course, the things like the food and the atmosphere are the same as all of the other Paramount and most Cedar Fair parks, and it's just kind of average in all of those aspects. But the top 4 at this park is just so good, it comes in at number 5. Oh boy, oh gee, coming in at number 4 is Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Now, on this channel, I can't go like a video without going on some rant about this park, but I do honestly really like Hershey Park. Mainly just because it has one of the greatest coaster collections out there. Wildcat's Revenge is an average RMC, which means it's amazing. Candemonium, solid B&M hyper. Sky Rush, a bit controversial, but an amazing Intamin with a great first drop. Great Bear, and maybe a bit below average, but still solid B&M invert. Fahrenheit, an Intamin that's good, kind of weird ride, but sure. And Storm Runner, which is an Intamin accelerator, and you can't go wrong with those. And even after that, you've got some still pretty solid coasters. Decent wooden collection with Lightning Racer and Comet sometimes, depends on the day. And you've got some family steel coasters like Laugh Track and Super Duper Looper, and overall, I mean, it's one of the greatest coaster collections, as I was saying. Their other non-coaster rides, though, could use some work. They've been improving their flat ride collection over the last few years with, like, the drop towers and mixed and all that stuff, but it could still use some work, and their one dark ride is pretty decent. The atmosphere and scenery are both fine. It's not going to blow you away, but it's not exceptionally bad or anything. The food isn't great. I'd stick to the chain restaurants here, but, like, it's serviceable. But if a park's your home park, you tend to notice a lot more flaws, and I have many issues with Hershey. I mean, they're easily the most expensive park on this list. The tickets and season passes are way more than the rest of these. They're always crowded and don't do the greatest job of crowd control. Their operations are pretty bad. Their season pass, I can make a whole video complaining about it. And, you know, I can make a whole video complaining about this park. I might do that at some point. I'm surprised I haven't done that already. But I definitely have a lot of issues. But with the coaster selection this good, and the rest of the park being pretty decent, I mean, I can't put it any lower than this. Okay, is there any justifiable reason for me to put Alton Towers above Hershey Park, Carowinds, and all of those? No, but this is my list, so Alton Towers is number 3. Maybe I'm a bit biased because this park was in England and everything was different and stuff, but this park was just really, really good. The coaster selection doesn't have a miss. Nemesis is my favorite B&M invert, and honestly my favorite B&M of all time. The Smiler is a really weird ride, but I love it, and it also is record-breaking. Wicker Man is a very good GCI, it's just Invader if it was good. 13 is like Verbolten, and yeah, that's the end of that sentence. And Rita, Intimate Accelerator, as I was saying earlier, can't go wrong with those. Galactica and Oblivion were both first of their kind B&Ms, and they're all solid. It's got some good dark rides like Duel and Gangsta Granny the Ride, let's go. And of course, Octonauts the Coaster, which I didn't ride, very sad. The theme at this park is almost at the level of Disney and Universal, which both of those are banned, by the way. I didn't mention that in the intro. But the theme isn't afraid to get more dark. The atmosphere in this park is great. There's greenery everywhere. There's a giant garden that if you get lost in, you're screwed. The entire park is built around a giant castle. This park also has, like, an entire decently sized aquarium in it. And, like, I don't know, this park's just really good. And this park does all of this without even being able to build above the tree line. with a mix between an elite coaster selection, great attractions, and one of the best themes and atmospheres I've seen at any park. I am comfortable with putting this at number 3. Coming in at number 2 is Six Flags Great Adventure, and unlike Alton Towers, I actually do have a justifiable reason to put this above Hershey Park. And that's this park's coaster selection, which is probably a top 3 coaster selection in the world, with the exception of like number 1 on this list and maybe like Energylandia. And if I compare this selection to Hershey, you had this. I prefer El Toro over Wildcat's Revenge. I prefer Nitro over Sky Rush. I prefer Batman the Ride over Great Bear. I prefer King Call over Storm Runner. And because process of elimination, I guess, I prefer Jersey Devil over Fahrenheit. And then you've still got some really good coasters at this park, like Superman, which is a decent flyer, and the Joker because, 40 free spins are cool, they're just a bit oversaturated. And for Six Flags Park, I think the theming at this park is a lot better. Like, you have the whole jungle area by King Call, like the Mexican-themed area by El Toro, and like a DC section, which, is in most parks. But I overall think the theming and atmosphere at this park is a lot better than the average Six Flags. And going back to comparing it with Hershey, the food here is edible, depending on where you go, and the ride selection outside of the coasters is okay, same with the dark ride it has. So it's a very comparable park to Hershey in my opinion, but I think this park edges it out, honestly, actually a lot more, just because of its better coaster selection. And El Toro is like so amazing. It's gotta be number 2. No boy, next is number 1, I bet you could never guess what it is. And of course, number 1 is Six Flags America. Oh, I used the wrong clip. This is of Cedar Point. I'm gonna have to make something up quick. Cedar Point has the greatest coaster lineup out of any park in existence, probably, I'm guessing. Like, there's really not much else to talk about with this park. I'll just go over some of the other things. Like, the atmosphere is fine. It's Cedar Ferry. Again, with the food, it's fine. It's Cedar Ferry. Same with the other rides. And its new boat ride, which isn't a dark ride, but boat ride's pretty cool. And yeah, that's all fine. But who cares about that? This is Cedar Point. You've got to talk about the coaster collection. Steel Vengeance, my favorite coaster of all time, and arguably the best coaster in the world. Then you've got Maverick, which is like I-305, but smaller, but with a launch. Millennium Force, the first ever Giga, and jumps between underrated and overrated all the time, but it's overall very good. Top Thrill Dragster, who knows what's happening to this ride, but it was good as an intimate accelerator. Magnum is decent, but not as good as the Morgan Hypers, I'm sorry. Then you've got a bunch of other good coasters that would often headline other parks, but at Cedar Point are just kind of okay, like Gatekeeper and Raptor. Valraven is complete garbage, but we can just ignore that. They've got decent family offerings, like Gemini, Iron Dragon, Blue Streak, and their new spinning coaster. But who cares? This park has the best coaster in the world and 3 other absolutely elite rides. That automatically puts this park at number 1. Okay, did that sound like a convincing argument for Cedar Point? Anyways, Six Flags America is the real number 1. I love Mind Eraser, I love Roar, I love Firebird. Okay, thank you so much for watching my top 15 parks. This was a decently long video by my standards. And I feel like I was saying a lot of similar things about the park, but thanks for sticking around until the end, unless you just skipped to the end. And in that case, why are you surprised that it's Cedar Point? Thank you for 200 subscribers, unless I'm uploading this before I hit 200 subscribers. And in that case, let's get to 200 subscribers and subscribe and stuff.